Hey guys, we're going to go over an optimal recruitment workflow for hospitality team member level hiring. This is just going to be a guide. You may want to run with a couple of different options on this, but hopefully it gives you a good overview of what's possible if you're a hospitality recruiter. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge that this whole process only has one interview step. There's no phone screen. Personally, we think that's enough. We really do. You may not think so. Look, you can amend this, you can adapt this. You'll be able to access these templates, hopefully, so you can kind of move them around. But what our goal is here is to make hires more quickly, create consistency in the hiring process, and ultimately achieve better hiring outcomes, better performance of new hires, better retention. Let's start at the beginning. I'm going to pinch in here and I'm going to look at the sourcing side of things. Now, for hospitality, it's really important, first and foremost, that you know exactly what you should be looking for in new hires. And the only way to do that is to upfront, before we start this recruitment system build, is look at the hiring criteria and get agreement from your key stakeholders. Now, those stakeholders are hiring managers that recruit these staff. They could be training development leaders. They could be HR, etc. And the goal is that all those stakeholders get together and agree the hiring criteria. There is a separate video on this. I really recommend you watch that video after this video to understand how to do that and actually how to get alignment. Because if your hiring criteria is not pre-agreed, if there's misalignment, so hiring managers have a different view to each other or to recruitment, then ultimately all this work is a waste of time because you're going to get to the candidates really quickly and effectively, but they're going to be the wrong candidates. So you've got to ensure that you take this step really seriously. We really recommend with this process, you start with something called a job analysis. It leaves very little room for hiring managers to impart their own personal opinion, conjecture onto the hiring criteria because you're starting from a position of what do our team members, front of house, etc., back of house, what do they actually do? What are the attributes required or the skills, the behaviors, etc., or knowledge that's required to do those things well? And you're really starting from that position, and all then therefore the assessment criteria, the things you're looking for as recruiters or things that hiring managers are looking for when they interview, they should all be job relevant. They shouldn't be personal. They should be really relevant to what this person's going to be doing in the job. So start there, get agreement on hiring criteria. Then we're going to move on to advertising. Look, depending on which market you're in, depending on what kind of level you are as a business, you want to be looking at distribution sectors, careers fairs, university programs, etc. can be very good for particularly back of house staff member hiring. Job boards are going to be where you're going to get the majority of your candidates. Social media can be good, and really do try and get diverse talent pools of candidates, maybe advertising places you wouldn't typically advertise. Where you advertise really is going to impact the people you could hire, but there's another key element to it, which is the assessment bit. So how are those applicants, those people entering the top of the funnel, being assessed? We're going to get onto that. The first thing I want to talk about first, though, is what that application form looks like. Now, for hospitality, we would recommend you use an ATS. Obviously, there are some hospitality specific ATSs, which are very popular. We would recommend you use those, or another good high volume ATS. You can use the job boards as a quasi ATS like Indeed, but it's going to be problematic for you. You're going to be working from multiple systems. The key thing is, preferably, your online assessment is integrated with your applicant tracking system. That's going to mean it's really smooth experience for candidates, and it means that your recruiters or hiring managers aren't going to have to do any lifting of sending out assessments or doing anything manual, which we know they might forget to do. Should you request a CV for hospitality roles? It really depends on the role, to be honest, and depends on your preference. We've put it as optional. I would be inclined to say yes, you might use it later on in the hiring process, but you should probably get it at that point. If it's entry level, if it's hourly work, maybe front of house, receptionist, or server, probably not. It really does depend on the role. Clearly, if it's manager level, you will want to see prior experience, in which case you might want to add in a resume review section here. We're going to focus on team member hiring here, so I've put it as optional. Should you have an eligibility check? Probably yes. So right to work, whether they have the right correct visa permits, whatever it might be, whether they live in a commutable distance, really kind of feasible things here. Should you remove names? Possibly. If you want to adhere by blind hiring rules and ensure your hiring process is free of bias, then yes, remove names from applications. And your ATS should help facilitate that. Now, we're going to talk about the selection piece. The online assessment is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, if that online assessment is showing candidates the reality of the role, only assessing job relevant attributes, and enabling candidates to deselect themselves if the role isn't a good fit for them and they're learning about the role, then you can start progressing candidates that score well in the assessment automatically if they hit a particular score threshold or if they achieve a certain banding in the assessment. That means that they, compared to all the other applicants, are in the top quartiles of percentiles of candidates. You can then trigger an action, which is, okay, great, we're going to fast track these candidates that have scored really well in the assessment straight away. We're not going to wait 2 weeks for them to apply and then review all our resumes and review all our assessments. We're going to instantly start moving candidates that score excellent or score a high percentage into interview so that they don't go off the market, so that we can secure that talent more quickly. Anyone that scores below a certain threshold, and again, that can be arbitrary, it can be set by you based on supply and demand. So you might want to start with the top 10 candidates and then maybe keep the second 5 or 10 in reserve. But anyone that scores in the lower quartiles, you might want to auto reject those candidates. Then at interview, you're going to assess them again, but you want to assess the same criteria that the online initial assessment looked at, but you're going to assess it in a different way. So, you really want to be testing those same attributes, those behaviors or skills, the things that you've identified and agreed with those stakeholders right up front is required in order to do the job well. But you're going to do it through interactive exercises, through role play, through, okay, show me what's wrong with this table setup, if it's front of house or etc. It could be a skills exercise if it's back of house. And you really want to be assessing those things in person, because the online assessment can be great at assessing things from a situational, a judgment perspective, even a skills perspective. But obviously, some of the things are better assessed in person. You might want to ensure that there is a structured interview here so that hiring managers, are not using bias to make their decision, which we all know happens, but we want to kind of mitigate against that as much as possible and have a structured scoring system against the attributes that have been agreed. Obviously, then you want to fast track those candidates that have performed well at interview straight into offer, and give personal feedback to the ones that weren't successful at that stage. Now, depending on your hiring volumes, that interview could be an assessment center of sorts, but we see this as an optimal workflow. You really should be going from the advertising the role or candidates applying to being hired in a matter of days. It shouldn't take a couple of weeks to wait for all the applicants to come in. You should have confidence with the right assessment at the heart of that process. Anyone that meets your threshold criteria in terms of their job suitability, demonstrating what's required to do the job, can have an offer in front of them really, really quickly. And that hopefully will improve the conversion rate of candidates. You won't have to advertise as widely. It will improve the quality of the people coming in. Hopefully they will be more aware about what to expect for the job, particularly if that assessment is telling them about the role, which will lead to better new hire retention and better new hire performance. So thanks so much. There's more videos in the recruiting playbook that we shared with you. I'd love to get your feedback, comments. Please do comment or like, share on this video, and best of luck.